search squads might not find clothes, footprints, or any sign of struggle or danger. Often, there's no plausible explanation for why the person isn't found. The lack of evidence drastically complicates efforts to crack these cases, adding to the strange and unnerving vibe of the whole missing 411 phenomena. And despite the best efforts of dedicated search and rescue teams, local law enforcement, and even federal agencies, answers to these eerie disappearances often remain out of reach. And as if the unusualness of the disappearance itself isn't enough, missing 411 cases also usually involve bizarre factors or situations connected with the disappearances. Here's where the really weird stuff comes in. Like how someone can be on a trail with a group and no one hears a peep out of the person when they go missing. Or when people who know the great outdoors like the back of their hand just up and vanish. There's also a noticeable pattern of these disappearances occurring near or in bodies of water like lakes, rivers, or even small streams. While this doesn't mean every single missing 411 case involves a body of water, it's a recurring trend that has been noted across a significant number of these mysterious incidents. And there are even more recurring themes within the list of oddities. Disappearances often happen specifically around berry patches or while berry picking. Seasoned search dogs either can't find a scent or refuse to track it. People are often found either unconscious or near unconsciousness when they haven't even been gone for very long, so it's not like it's from starvation or dehydration. And victims are often found in or around swamps or briar patches. On some occasions, when one of these missing folks are found, either dead or alive, it's often in a spot that's already been thoroughly searched from top to bottom. Or kids will turn up alive miles from where they were last seen, in places so rough it seems nearly impossible that they could have traveled there on their own. Like the story of Judy Bolches that I just covered in the video about Devil's Head in Colorado. I'll put a link to that video in the description below. She was a 6-year-old girl with a weakened heart who up and disappeared and was found 18 hours later at a full 12 miles of rough terrain away. Really? And in some even stranger cases, people are found with no shoes but their feet are just fine. Or they're missing clothes when it's so cold they should have already died of hypothermia. Weather can be another weird thing, like sudden fog or storms happening right after the person goes missing and just in time to completely hamper any search and rescue efforts. Adding yet another layer to this iceberg is the lack of any traditional explanation. There are absolutely cases where people go missing and there is evidence that points to more straightforward explanations. Stuff like accidents or attacks from wild animals or the person deciding to disappear on their own. With accidents or attacks from animals, you would normally find some trace or evidence, but that's just missing in these cases. As for people deciding to disappear on their own, it's pretty unlikely that someone, especially a kid or an older person, would pick the middle of nowhere as the place to do it. Another signature trait of these missing 411 mysteries is the lackluster official answers given for the disappearances from the police or park authorities. Most of the time, they chalk the disappearances up to the usual stuff, like folks getting lost, dangers from the environment, or wild animal encounters. But here's the kicker. In the missing 411 cases, these official answers often don't match up with the specific facts and evidence we have about the disappearance. These gaps can show up in different ways, like no physical evidence when you'd expect to find something, or autopsy results that don't add up. And even though the authorities spin the usual narratives, the missing pieces of concrete evidence, or sometimes evidence that outright contradicts these narratives, leaves us with more questions than we started with. One thing Paulides keeps coming back to is the pretty concerning lack of full, organized, and easily available data on folks going missing in national parks and wilderness areas. pretty surprising when you think about how many people visit these places every year and how important this kind of data is for stopping more cases and solving the ones that we have. This absence of data is a huge roadblock in figuring out and solving these cases. What adds to this worry about data accessibility is the suggestion that there might be some withholding of information or not enough investigation happening on the part of the authorities. There have been times when families of the missing folks or independent investigators like David Paulides have hit walls trying to gather information. Walls like the high costs to get the information, super long waiting times, incomplete records, or just a dismissive attitude towards any questions. If you look at the usual steps taken for missing persons cases in a city setting and compare them to how disappearances in national parks and wilderness areas are dealt with, there's a big difference. While city cases usually get a full investigation, immediate alerts to the public, and usually stay open until they're solved, cases in national parks and wilderness areas often don't get nearly as much attention or follow-up. It's also really important to take a look at and understand the doubters' views when it comes to the missing 411 phenomena. Critics of the phenomena usually say that Paulides' criteria are too wide, which lets him pick and choose cases that fit his storyline. They believe that most of the disappearances can be chalked up to more everyday causes, like accidents from lack of preparation, attacks by wild animals, or people choosing to live off the grid, or tragically take their own lives. While these arguments might seem solid at first glance, it's important to remember that David has a ton of experience as a police detective. This experience makes him pretty well equipped to tell the difference between run-of-the-mill missing person cases and those that are truly out of the ordinary. His focus on cases that don't have a usual explanation isn't necessarily him just picking out the ones that fit his theory, but a legitimate way of highlighting patterns in the data that could mean something. Some question the significance of those statistical quirks and the odd conditions he points out. They suggest that the disappearances, once you factor in more mundane reasoning like the crazy high number of visitors, the area's population, the range of different terrains, and other environmental factors, might be nothing more than a predictable ratio, not an anomaly at all. Other critics argue the weird circumstances and patterns could be chalked up to cognitive biases, like confirmation bias, which is looking for evidence to confirm what you already believe, or apophenia, which is finding patterns where they don't really exist. They claim we humans have a knack for seeing connections where there just might not be any. Before being drawn into studying people going missing in the deep woods, David had done quite a lot of research into the Bigfoot phenomenon. He actually had a few encounters of his own and even authored 2 books on the subject. Because of this, some critics point to David's background on Bigfoot research and say he just thinks they're all Bigfoot kidnappings. And I'm sure that possibility has popped into his head more than a few times. But regardless of what he personally thinks the answer is, the facts of these cases are served up on a plate, leaving you to decide for yourself what to think. Lastly, some critics point out the lack of a proposed cause or explanation for the disappearances, saying that without a clear theory, the missing 411 phenomena is just a product of loose categorization. Now, skepticism is absolutely necessary for any scientific or investigative process. But if we look at the missing 411 phenomena from a different angle, it becomes evident that his critics might be missing the point. But David has always said that his job is to lay out the data and let the patterns tell their own story.